Okay, let it roll. Okay, sorry about the delay, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening anyway, and welcome to tonight's meeting of Gedling Borough Council Planning Committee. And I believe the last one for this, for 2022, so enjoy it while you can. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence and substitutions. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, apologies from Councillor Peter Barnes and Councillor Keneally, and Councillor Pearson is substituting. Also, apologies for lateness for Councillor Lawrence, who's been unavoidably delayed by public transport, but he is on his way and will be joining us shortly.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies of absence from Councillor Barnfather, Councillor Adams and Councillor Parr, and I am substituting for one of those three.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, next item on the agenda is to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of October 2022, which you'll find on page 5 to 33. Was somebody who was there, please move them. Thank you. And second. Thank you. And those that were there, please vote to approve. Disapprove. And abstentions. Thank you very much. Right, Planning Committee protocol you'll find on pages 35 to 37. I'm sure you've all read it many times and understood it fully. Item 3 on the agenda is declaration of interest. I will declare a collective non-pecuniary interest on behalf of the Planning Committee on item number 4, application 2021/1135, which is 135 to 141 Front Street, Arnold. And item number 5, application number 2022-0900, 1 Pearlthorpe Crescent, Gedling. As in both cases, the council owns the application site, or part of. Also item number 7, application number 2022/0825, King George V Plainfields, as the council is both the applicant and the owner of the site. And item number 8, application number 2022/1105, land at the corner of Wheatsheaf Court and Main Street, Burton Joyce, as the council is the applicant. Do I have any other declarations of interest? Councillor David Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to the general declaration of interest on application 8, I've got private non-pecuniary interest in that, as I took the decision to apply for the CCTV.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Ellis. So, to go on to the first substantive item, which is number 4, the application 2021/1135, 135 to 141 Front Street, Arnold, which you should find on page 40 of your agenda papers. And I'd like Mr. Michael Zucker, who is the applicant, to come forward and say a few words to elaborate on this particular application. You've got 3 minutes, please, Mr. Zucker.
Is that on? Good. Good evening, my name is Michael Zucker, and along with my brother and my mother, I own 135 to 141 Front Street. Thank you, councillors, for allowing me to speak here. I've never spoken at a planning meeting before, so please forgive the fact that I'm using these notes. The properties were originally bought by my late grandfather, who lived and worked in Nottingham. Unfortunately, they are currently not fit for purpose. 2 of the 4 units, 135 and 139, are empty, and the managing agents are unable to let them in their current state. The owners of the cafe in 137 have contacted us saying they cannot run their business under the current economic circumstances and are looking to try to sell on the lease or exit their tenancy early. In other words, 3 of the 4 tenants have already decided that these shops and units are not worthy of running businesses from. This has nothing to do with the proposed redevelopment. This also means that early next year, 2 or possibly 3 units will have to be boarded up for security purposes. Combined with these empty units, I also have to deal with regular fly tipping, and it's very hard indeed to stop this and other antisocial behaviour on site. Far better than the existing state of affairs would be to create modern commercial units that would be attractive to customers and tenants. So I changed management to local company FHP and engaged a local architect, Julia Caroli at JLK, who have past experience designing renovation and regeneration projects in the area. We are not professional property developers setting out to maximise profits at whatever cost, and our instructions to Julia were to design a scheme that would serve the community and upgrade the commercial offering at this end of Front Street, and most importantly, design a scheme that Gedling Planning would approve based on similar regeneration projects. We want to create a scheme that works for you as well as us. The remaining tenant, Mr. Sheralambu from Unit 141, opposes this development plan and has had family members and friends submit letters of disapproval. As I've just explained, the assumptions in these letters that we wish to close down 4 thriving businesses are simply not correct. In relation to the Blue Circle, for many, many years, long before COVID, Mr. Sheralambu has claimed that business is bad, continually negotiating deferred rental payments and debt write-offs and rarely meeting the legal obligations in his lease. He's not paid a penny in rent for almost 2 years and currently owes tens of thousands of pounds. If you approve these submitted plans, then the antisocial behaviour and fly tipping, which currently blights this site, would be removed by the creation of high-quality commercial and residential units. There'll be 9 new modern energy-efficient residential apartments, creating good quality housing for the people of Arnold and with the benefit of balcony space. An asbestos survey will be commissioned before demolition work, and the construction of this new development would be done where possible by local professionals, hopefully creating new local job opportunities. I hope you understand that we genuinely believe these plans will upgrade the site and be of benefit to the local area and residents. I hope that you'll approve them. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'd now like to ask Kevin to elaborate on this application for us.
Thank you, Chairman. The proposal relates to the demolition of the existing 4 units at ground floor and the 4 residential properties above, and the replacement with a 3-storey building with 2 ground floor commercial units, one of which could be a hot food takeaway or a cafe, and with 9 residential units above at the 1st and 2nd floor. For clarity, the application site is the plan in front of you, which does show the extended route through the car park to the rear, which is owned by the council, hence the application coming before us this evening. Located in Arnold Town Centre, the redevelopment is acceptable in principle and would add to the vitality and viability of the town centre by providing active frontages at ground floor. That's the existing street scene as we have it at the moment, and then that's the proposed. Whilst the 3-storey in nature, the proposal would sit well in relation to the adjacent properties. As you can see, the mass is very similar to the properties either side. The residential use above at 1st floor and 2nd floor is again appropriate for a town centre and in this location. And the amenity of future occupiers of these units and that of the neighbouring properties would be appropriately protected from any food preparation noises from the use below by appropriate extract details. That would be secured by appropriately worded condition 7 in the report. The site would be accessed via the council's car park to the rear, off High Street for deliveries and parking. This is how the current development is accessed, and you will note from the report at paragraph 4.6 that our Parks and Street Care team have no objection to this arrangement. This is the current arrangement that serves the current proposal, the current properties on the site. The Highway Authority has also raised no concern in relation to the scheme. It's noted that there's been a number of objections, 18 from local residents in addition to the petition. A number of issues have been raised, and not wanting to reiterate, but they are discussed in the main body of the report. I accept that it's unfortunate that existing businesses would be affected by the scheme, but the redevelopment of the site would provide appropriate replacement facilities and, in my opinion, would improve the character and appearance of the area. Any affected businesses can approach our economic development team with a view to providing alternative premises elsewhere in the borough. Accordingly, the proposal is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. So, here we have it on page 40 of your agenda papers. The proposal is to demolition of existing buildings and the creation of residential apartments and ground floor commercial units. Would anybody like to move that application? Thank you. And second? Thank you. Would anybody like to speak to it? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. I have tremendous sympathy for the existing businesses that are in this location. I've been on a number of occasions to both the chip shop and the cafe, and I would be sorry to see both of those go. However, I mean, you can just tell from those photographs this site is in clear need of redevelopment, and I think what's been put in front of us looks like a very good scheme that will make a big difference to that end of Front Street, and for that reason, I'm minded to support this application.
Thank you. Does anybody else like to speak? No? Are you content that I move to the vote then? Right, well, you'll find the recommendation on page 50 of your agenda papers, which is to grant full planning permissions subject to the conditions listed and for the reasons set out in the report. Can I see all those in favour, please show? And again, and abstentions. That application has been approved. Thank you very much. If we move on to the next one, which is agenda item 5, application number 2022/0900, which you'll find on page 56 excuse me, of your agenda papers, which is erection of two-storey detached dwelling, alterations to existing curtilage and associated works. And I have Mr. Aaron Riley, who is the applicant. If you'd like to come and speak to this application, you have 3 minutes, please, to put what you have to say. Thank you.
Working? Cool. Good evening, Chairperson and committee members. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak here. I'm slightly nervous. I've not publicly spoke since I was a youth councillor many years ago, so this is very strange at the moment. My name is Aaron. I'm the applicant for the proposed development in question, along with my wife, Emily. I speak here today, obviously, in support of this application, and I would like to preface my presentation by giving some background on myself and my intentions. It's been a pretty crazy year. We have had the amazing opportunity to purchase and renovate a house on Pearlthorpe Crescent, a house that my wife, myself, and my mum are able to call home, and a beautiful place for, in the next few years, my mum to retire to as well. During my many months of sanding, fitting kitchen cabinets, more sanding, and a little bit more sanding after that, we essentially came to the realization that the side and rear garden are far in excess of what we need. We feel that the side area of the land is perfect to facilitate the provision of a new dwelling. We know there is a pressing need for houses in Gedling. We would love to facilitate a family to put down their roots in the area and call it home in the way that we are now doing. Although I would advise them to get laminate flooring and not sand it. I would now like to summarise the nature of the proposal. The new dwelling would mimic, in almost every sense, the adjoining houses to the south of Pearlthorpe Crescent. There is no overriding build form or layout character at the junction over which the proposed dwelling would face. Accordingly, the proposed dwelling would not appear out of keep with the area. Key to the design process has been to avoid any undue impact on neighbours. The proposed dwelling is no different to number 1 to 4 Pearlthorpe Crescent with regard to how it sits in the area and in terms of the separation distance of the dwellings on the neighbouring streets. Off-street parking is provided for both dwellings, and we have amended proposals in light of feedback received from highways and planning officers. These are both now supportive of the proposed parking. Along with my wife, we've put a lot of effort into this proposal. As you'll note from the planning officer's report, our proposal is considered to be in compliance with national, regional and local planning policy. With the greatest respect to the concerns raised, we would ask you to cast them aside as the objections which have been made against the proposal. Having been reviewed, the planning officer's report agrees any concerns raised will be totally avoided or mitigated, and in my humble opinion, I would agree, and I hope you will do also. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And now I'll call upon Nigel to elaborate on this particular application, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a full application for the erection of a dwelling on the side garden of 1 Pearlthorpe Crescent. The dwelling would be a 3-bedroom and detached property, be similar in design to the host dwelling. You can see here from the layout, there would be 1 parking space up here, and these are the 2 parking spaces that would be additional that's actually on the land owned by Gedling Borough Council. The negotiating on that land would actually occur outside of this planning process, but there is a condition, number 4 within the report, that indicates that would need to be supplied before the dwelling could be occupied. And based on that, the Highway Authority have raised no objection to the application. The design of the dwelling is considered to be appropriate in the context, and given the size of the garden, it's considered the dwelling would not be unduly prominent or out of character in the streetscape. A gap of approximately 5 metres will be retained at the widest point, reducing down to approximately 2.5. There's also a change in levels in the area, so the actual dwelling would be lower than Pearlthorpe Avenue, so its prominence from the streetscape is considered to be acceptable also. Looking at the relationship with the neighbouring properties, it will be no different to those that currently exist, so the impact on residential amenity is considered to be acceptable. Taking all above factors into account, the application is recommended for approval as outlined on pages 61 to 63 of the committee report. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Nigel. So there we have it on page 556 of your agenda papers. Erection of a 2-storey detached dwelling, alterations to existing curtilage and associated works. Would anybody like to propose that motion? Thank you very much. And second? Thank you. Would anybody like to speak to it? Councillor Lawrence.
I'd just like to say how nice it is to see a developer providing something which completely fits in with the street scene. We've seen so many applications which don't, and I think that...
Can you speak more directly into your microphone, Councillor Lawrence? We can't hear you. Thank you.
I'll apologise for being late, and I'll just say that it is very nice to see an application that has a development that fits in so nicely with the existing street scene.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I grew up around there, went to Gedling School actually, so know the area quite well, and it is nice to see houses coming forward that aren't on the green belt as well, but also houses coming forward, like Councillor Lawrence says, within the street scene, but in addition to that, with adequate parking finally. So I'll be supporting it on those bases.
Good, thank you very much. You won't be screaming from the rooftops on this one then. Anyone else like to contribute? You're quite content that I go to the vote. Thank you. You'll find the recommendation on page 61 of your agenda papers, which is to grant full planning permission for the reasons set out in the report and subject to the conditions listed below. Can I see all those in favour? And against, and sorry. Oh, right, sorry, absolutely. Yes. Can I see all those in favour? Again, please raise your hand, which includes myself this time. Okay. And against, and abstentions. That application has been approved. Thank you very much. Right, let's move on to the next one, which is agenda item 6, application number 2021/1332, Ashdale, Nottingham Road, Burton Joyce. That you'll find on page 66 of your agenda papers. And this is a proposal approved of reserved matters, appearance and landscaping pursuant to outline permission 2021/1464, which I think you remember we actually approved at last month's Planning Committee meeting, which you'll find on page 20 to 30 of this particular report. We have Mr. Dan Stack here, the applicant, who's going to speak on behalf of this application.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address the committee tonight. My name is Dan Stack, Director of Chevin Homes, the applicant for this application. We've been in proactive dialogue with case officers and principal officers for some time and welcome the constructive feedback given by all parties during the consideration of this application, along with the previous Section 73 application. And we thank the officers' efforts to get us to this committee. As members may already be aware, the site is subject to the benefit of an outline planning consent for 11 dwellings. The site will provide a range of 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom homes and 3 bedroom bungalows, designed to create a high quality living environment. The reserve matters before the application this evening seeks the approval of the building's appearance and landscaping only, as other matters have previously been dealt with as part of the outline approval. We have not received any objections from any statutory consultees. In terms of the appearance, the majority of the dwellings will be built in red brick and with a consistency as per the Ashdale, which is the host dwelling. Some of the plots are proposed to be rendered in order to provide some variety to the street scene and mirror the existing rendering around Ashdale and the rest of the village. The variety and finish will be similar to other pockets that you see around Burton Joyce, and therefore we consider the proposals are in accordance with the local planning policies and neighbourhood plans. And we welcome that the final choice of materials is controlled by condition. The sightings of the individual dwellings is not a matter for this application, as they have already been approved under the outline application, and the same is true for highways matters. We have received no objection from the Highway Authority. Regarding landscaping and trees, the principles and details of these were already agreed as part of the outline, and furthermore, condition 18 of the outline consent ensures that further tree protection measures are carried out in accordance with the arboricultural reports. A condition to this application as well provides further comfort in this regard. Contributions towards education, open space, local labour agreement and the maintenance of the private drive have secured via the existing Section 106 agreement. And this is in addition to the sill charge, which will also apply to the application site and payable once the development commences. In conclusion, this reserve matters application put before you this evening is considered to comply with the relevant planning policies and proposes a high quality environment in keeping with the immediate vicinity within and with the wider village of Burton Joyce. The application is supported by officers and is the final piece of the jigsaw to allow this site to come forward to provide a range of housing for the village, as well as release the Section 106 and sill payments. I therefore respectfully invite you to follow your officer's advice and approve the application this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Nigel, would you like to elaborate on this one for us, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The application is for the reserve matters approval, namely appearance and landscaping pursuant to the outline permission 2021-1464. The matters that have been previously approved are the layout, access and scale. In terms of the appearance of the units, this is a typical example. As the speaker said, it's predominantly red brick in materials, and with some detailing around the window sills and eave detailing. And there is proposed to be at least, I think, 2 to 3 units to have a render finish also. These are some of from the views from the neighbouring properties of the application site. And this just shows some of the landscaping that's proposed. So it's predominantly in these frontage areas around here, and all of the existing trees that are subject to a TPOs are in these locations and they're to be retained. But really, considering those 2 key considerations, we consider the design of the scheme to be acceptable, and in short, to recommend approval as outlined on pages 72 to 74 of the committee report. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So, page 66 of your agenda papers, proposal is approval of reserved matters, appearance and landscaping pursuant to outlined permission 2021/1468 for the erection of 11 dwellings. Would anybody like to propose that motion?
Move it.
Okay, anyone like to second it? Would anybody like to speak to the application? Nope. It has already been, an outline been approved last month, so there's not a great deal of difference. So we'll move on to the recommendation, which is to grant reserved approval subject to the following conditions for the reasons set out in the report. Can I see all those in favour, please show? And against, and abstentions. Okay, thank you. That application has been approved. Right, we move on to the next one, which is application 2022/0825, King George V Plainfields, which you'll find on page 76. Which is the installation of a 2.4 metre high fence around 3 sides of the playground. Would anybody like to move that application? Yes, and second. Okay, would anybody like to speak to it? Yes, excuse me, Councillor Elwood.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I don't know, it may not even be a planning consideration, but I just thought it would be worth mentioning it. The way this is going to operate is, I gather, volunteers are going to open and unlock and lock the gate at the beginning and the end of the day. Just have some concerns that, is that going to create problems? It just feels a bit strange. That's all. You could imagine instances where maybe somebody doesn't unlock it, and then members of the public complain because the thing's not locked, or I don't know. It just seems a bit sort of odd, really. But I don't know whether it's a planning consideration or not in that regard. Thank you.
So thank you for your question, Councillor Elwood. It should be noted that the Borough Council are the landowner, so ultimately in terms of the management of the site, we would have control and we will be able to influence should any issues arise going forward.
Does anybody else like to speak to this? Yes, Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. I know that this has come about because residents were concerned about antisocial behaviour on there, and it is unfortunately a problem in a lot of areas that have playgrounds like this. I think it's welcome that the Friends of King George V Recreation Ground are prepared to take local action to bring this forward, and also are prepared to lock and unlock. I know there's been a bit of complaining in the local press but whenever anything comes up, people complain about it. I'm quite happy to support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this?
Chairman, Mr Cartwright would like to add some further comments.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just going back to Councillor Harewood's comments, it's my understanding that the group has worked with our Parks and Street Care team to arrange that, and the idea is that the opening times would very much mirror that of the other parks within the borough. So it's very much sort of daylight hours that the parks are open, and then obviously closed when it's dark.
Yes, I'd just like to add that I think that the Friends of King George V Recreation Guard should be commended for their initiative in this instance, and are working constructively with the local community and with the council. It's the sort of community working we like to see. Okay, so we know what the proposal is. The recommendation, which you'll find on page 79, is to grant full planning permission subject to the conditions listed below. Can I see all those in favour, please show. And again, stand abstentions. That application is approved. Thank you very much. Now move on to item 8, application 2022-1105, land at the corner of Wheatsheaf Court, which you'll find on page 82 of your agenda papers, which is the installation of a 10-metre column together with a 2-metre antenna extension and concrete base for a CCTV camera. Would somebody like to move that recommendation, that application?
Move it.
Thank you. And second? Thank you. Anybody like to speak to this application? Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm delighted to see this application come forward. Actually, the spot that it's proposed to be erected in is on the main thoroughfare through Burton Joyce. You know, you've got a local pub there, you've got the high street, and you've got the co-op, and so it's busy with traffic for visitors to the village and also people within the village, and also where the co-op is, it can attract some bored teenagers sometimes. So this CCTV camera will keep them safe, but also hopefully prevent any antisocial behaviour, which we have seen in and around the Wheatsheaf Court area. So delighted to see this come forward. Thank the officers for their work they've done here, and look forward to seeing the camera in place, but also encourage people to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak to this application? You're quite content that I move to the vote then? Recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the following conditions, which you'll find on page 85 of your agenda papers. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. And again, stand abstentions. Thank you. That application has been approved. Okay. Now we go on to agenda item 9, which is an enforcement, which you'll find on page 87 of your agenda papers. And I will let Kevin go through this one because it's got quite a history.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the breach of planning control relates to the car park to the rear of the block of commercial units with the residential units above. So that's the application site there. Well, not the application site, but the breach site there. So it's the car park area to the rear of the commercial units. So it's that area of land just behind that wall there. And that's the block of commercial properties and with the flats above. It's considered that this activity in this location is out of character and inappropriate and would result in demonstrable harm to the amenity of the neighbouring occupiers in the form of noise and disturbance. The activities have included deals with the inspecting of cars, selling of cars, revving of engines, test driving the vehicles. A lot of this happening quite late on in the evening. I think there's also been an evidence that the surrounding road network has also been used to park and test drive vehicles, all of which further adds to the harm of this unauthorised use. The recommendation is to take appropriate enforcement action, including the serving of any enforcement notice and court action if required. The site itself is, yes, somewhat complex ownership, with multiple ownerships. As such, the enforcement notice would have to be served on all the parties that were the subject of the planning contravention notice. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Would anybody like to move that report?
Move it.
Thank you. Second. Anybody like to speak to that report? We're content that I move to the vote, which you find on page 94. The recommendation is that the head of development and place be authorised to take all relevant planning enforcement action, including the service of any unnecessary enforcement notices, plus the cessation of unauthorised vehicle sales, plus the removal of all vehicles associated with the vehicle sales business. All those in favour of that, please show. And against and abstentions, that recommendation has been approved. Right, thank you very much. Now we come to the cut out and keep part of the agenda, which is the interim planning policy statement and the 5-year housing land supply assessment. I'll ask Mike to introduce those.
Thank you, Chairman. So the interim planning policy statement on first homes was approved by Cabinet on the 6th of October. I've included it in your agenda packs as an item for information, and I wanted to pull out some of the key points for the benefit of Planning Committee. So local planning document policy 36 seeks affordable housing on sites of 15 or more, and further guidance is provided in our adopted supplementary planning document. So that SPD was adopted in 2009. So percentage targets for affordable housing are 10%, 20% or 30%, depending upon the location in the borough. In general, the council sought 70% affordable rent and 30% immediate housing, where there's been an affordable housing requirement. So the intermediate housing is the shared ownership properties. Our preference is for affordable housing to be spread across sites and not in clusters. So we control that through the Section 106 agreement usually. We normally require the developer to provide a plan, if they haven't already done so, to specify which units, which are comprised in the planning permission, are actually the affordable units and which units are the market housing. So that's, just by way of background, our previous position in relation to affordable housing. So first homes, which have been introduced by the government, so they were set out initially in a ministerial statement, and further guidance was provided in the planning practice guidance, are a specific kind of discounted market sale housing and meet the definition of affordable housing. So first homes are now the government's preferred discount marking tenure and should account for at least 25% of all affordable housing units delivered on a site, or 10% of dwellings delivered on a site, whichever is the greater. So as I've just said, the national requirements for first homes are set out in the planning practice guidance. So what the planning practice guidance does is it states that a minimum of, so the default position for first homes is that there's a minimum discount of 30% is applied against the market value. The initial sale price cannot be at a price greater than £250,000. The annual household income should not exceed £80,000. A first-time buyer, they must have a mortgage of at least 50%, and the discount should be secured in perpetuity. Local authorities are advised to set out our position in local plans, supplementary planning documents, or in an interim planning policy statement as soon as possible. So that's the advice that's provided in the planning practice guidance. Local authorities do have flexibility on the application of first homes at a local level. So we can increase the discount above the 30% minimum to either 40 or 50%. We can vary the household income cap, and we can include additional eligibility criteria, such as a local connection test. So if I just go back to the default position, which is set out in the planning practice guidance, we discussed this as a management team when first homes were first introduced by the government, and we were incredibly concerned in relation to the sale price of £250,000, the household income of £80,000. And, you know, there was a kind of a consensus among the management group and the wider planning teams that, you know, really with a household income of £80,000, residents in Gedling Borough ought to be able to afford to buy a property on the open market. It may not be the house that they would want, that all residents would want to live in, but nevertheless, they should actually be able to afford to acquire a property. So what we did is we, as part of the Greater Nottingham Planning Partnership, we actually commissioned some evidence to look at, you know, what some appropriate local level caps should be to ensure that these first homes are actually truly affordable. So the recommendations, so far as they relate to Gedling in the Iceni Commission, the advice to us was not to increase the 30% national discount for first homes. The advice is that the price for first homes should be capped at £173,000. The household income cap for a first home buyer household should be up to £38,800, and it was recommended that we include a local connection test. It was clearly set out in the Commission that the priority need for affordable homes is housing for rent, so affordable rented properties rather than other home ownership products. And it was suggested to the Council in the report that a case for seeking less than 10% affordable home ownership could be made. There are tensions with the planning practice guidance that does require 25% of homes, 25% of the requirement to actually be first homes. So to implement that recommendation in the Iceni report would cause some tensions with the planning practice guidance. So our approach, which is set out in the interim planning policy guidance on first homes, is that we do apply the national discount of 30% below market price. We set a price cap at £173,000. We set a household income cap of £38,800. We do include a local connection test, and we do ensure that the first-time buyer, in terms of the mortgage requirements, that they have at least a 50% mortgage, and that's the same as the national requirement set out in the planning practice guidance. In progressing this interim policy, we did note that there was a tension in relation to our existing policy, our existing supplementary planning document, because that's only engaged at developments of 15 or, proposing 15 or more properties. So what national policy states is that a target of 10 first homes can be sought on sites of 10 or more dwellings. So we do now apply first homes to all major developments. So we require them, so we have requirements at 10 to 14 properties and then 15 or more properties. So on sites of 15 or more homes, 10% of all homes on site are required to be first homes, or 25% of the affordable homes requirement, whichever is the greater. So the remaining affordable homes requirement is for affordable rent. So that's about 75% of the requirement. So I guess in practice, the impact of implementing this policy is that other affordable homes products, so the shared ownership product actually falls away. So in Gedling, the approach that we have, it's affordable homes for rent, and also first homes. We propose a local connection test, as I outlined earlier, so applicants should either have lived in Gedling Borough Council's administrative area for 3 of the last 5 years, or have immediate family member or members who are living in Gedling Borough's administrative area, or have permanent employment within Gedling Borough Council's administrative area, or are in service of the regular or reserved armed forces of the Crown, or have applied within 5 years of leaving. So in terms of the status of the interim planning policy statement, it's now a material consideration for determining planning applications for eligible housing schemes. It supersedes the affordable housing SPD in relation to the requirements for affordable homes and eligibility criteria, but it will need to be read in conjunction with the local planning document policy 36 as a parent policy, and those parts of the affordable housing supplementary planning document which remain relevant. So we're not rescinding, we haven't rescinded the 2009 SPD. This interim policy statement is read alongside it and updates that where applicable so that it fully aligns with the requirements of the planning policy practice guidance. So in conclusion, first homes are the government's preferred affordable home ownership tenure. 10% of the total homes on site should be first homes. The interim planning policy with local flexibilities was adopted by Cabinet on the 6th of October, and the delivery of first homes and affordable housing is through Section 106 agreements. Does anyone have any questions? So the recommendation to Planning Committee is that the interim planning policy statement on first homes is noted.
Councillor Lawrence.
I'm just wondering what the attitude of developers is to this. You know, I'm just thinking of something different, and that is where the district valuer has assessed developments as not being viable in terms of things like Section 106. You know, basically I wonder what developers think of it, and whether or not they are forced to comply with this. I mean, I have no problem with it at all.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. So we first introduced the policy to developers during its preparation. So we introduced it at the Developer Forum earlier on in the year. We had some feedback at that time. It wasn't neither positive or negative generally. We set out our position. But since we have implemented the policy, we haven't had any specific pushback from developers. So it is still very much early days. Developers will be required to, we will expect compliance with the policy because it's entirely in accordance with the planning practice guidance. So there's nothing contained within it which is at variance with the approach which has been set by the government. And I do note that already housing developers who are active in the borough are now actually marketing first homes. So if we look on Rightmove at properties in Gedling, I won't name any particular site, but we can clearly see that those properties are being marketed, even in the absence of completion of legal agreements. So that would indicate that housing developers are on board with the approach.
Thank you. That's very hopeful and helpful.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Just a question regarding the eligibility cap on income. If the government says it shouldn't exceed £80,000 and we're capping it at 38, what are other neighbouring councils doing? Have we had a look at that?
The government's been entirely clear that we can set a local approach if we've got evidence to support that. And our evidence is contained within the ICNE Commission, which I very briefly introduced earlier on. In terms of the neighbouring authorities in Nottinghamshire, I'm not aware that any of the neighbouring authorities are implementing local level caps in the same way that Gedling have.
Any more questions? Okay. Well, we have a report here on page 95. Anybody like to move that report?
Move it.
Second. Thank you. And the recommendation is that the Planning Committee notes the Gedling Borough Council's interim planning possibly statement. All those in favour of noting that? And against and abstentions. Okay, that report is noted. So we go on to agenda item 11, which is the 5-year housing land supply assessment 2022.
Thank you, Chairman. So the 5-year housing land supply assessment for 2022 was also noted. This report was noted by Cabinet on the 6th of October. Again, what I've done is I've pulled together some slides to pick out some of the key points that I thought, that would be of relevance to Planning Committee. So the NPPF requires local planning authorities to update their 5-year housing land supply assessments on an annual basis. The 2022 report covers a 5-year period, 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of March 2027. The housing delivery test result for 2021 is 85%, and the council now apply a 5% buffer in the 5-year supply and not the 20%. So just a reminder in relation to the housing delivery action plan. 4 housing delivery test results have been published, and the latest test was on the 14th of January 2022. So what we can see in terms of our housing delivery action plan, so the housing delivery test result, is that our delivery has increased. So the first result was in 2018, it was at 51%, 2019, 58%, 2020, 68%, and the latest result is 85%. So because delivery is below the 85% housing target, there's no need to add that 20% buffer to the 5-year supply. It's only a 5% buffer that we're now required to add. So I thought it'd be important for members to understand how we assess the 5-year land supply. So firstly, we need to establish the number of dwellings that should be provided in the next 5-year period. Secondly, we identify the sites that could contribute to supply, including windfall allowance. Thirdly, and very importantly, we assess the deliverability of sites. And finally, we establish whether there is a 5-year land supply. So the first step is to establish the number of dwellings. So as the Aligned Core Strategy was adopted in September 2014, and the policies are yet to be reviewed, this means the housing requirement figure is out of date. The council must now use the annual local housing need figure calculated using the standard method. So guidance is provided in the National Planning Practice Guidance on using the standard methodology, and that's detailed in Appendix 4. The annual local housing need for Gedling Borough is 497 dwellings. Secondly, we identify sites. So sites come forward through the Strategic Housing Land Availability Assessment Database, and that includes all strategic sites in the Aligned Core Strategy and site allocations in the local planning document. It includes sites granted planning permission before the 31st of March 2022, and we include updates to existing sites in the SHLAR database during the current financial year, such as work starting on site, construction completing, a new planning permission being granted or a new planning application being submitted have also been noted. The second step is to look at future sources of supply, and we add a windfall allowance. So this is permitted by the MPPF, and we add a windfall allowance of 258 dwellings. The third step, and as I said earlier, is really, really important, is to assess the deliverability of sites. So in accordance with the MPPF, sites must be deliverable within 5 years. And to be deliverable, they need to be available now, they need to be suitable, and they need to be achievable now. And what we do is we scrutinise that supply. So just because a site is allocated and it has planning permission, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's deliverable. So it's really, really important that we do give significant scrutiny to all of our supply. And there's been a huge amount of work which has gone into this to ensure that these figures are accurate, and that the supply that we're actually including is actually deliverable and can be progressed within 5 years. And finally, we establish whether there is a 5-year land supply. So the annual local housing need, as I said earlier, is 497. Local housing need for 5 years is 2,485. We add a 5% buffer, that's rounded, so another 124. So the 5-year housing target is 2,609 dwellings. And then we look at what the actual supply is. So what we've demonstrated is that our supply for 5 years is 3,783 against an annual housing target rounded, which is 522. So that's 5% higher than the 497. And what we've determined is that we have a 7.25 year supply of housing land, and that is an improved position from 2021. So previously we demonstrated a 6.32 year supply of housing land. Probably not done this justice in the time that I've got, because this is complex, but I would ask that you, if you were interested in this, that you do read through the report, and if you have any questions, that you contact either me or the planning policy team, and they'll be able to provide some further clarification for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So there's besides the opening few pages, you can see that, as Mike has said, there is a heck of a lot to digest in here. And everyone in the planning policy departments and legal and all the other departments that are involved in drawing up these reports really should be congratulated. And as I said, this is rather frivolously, this is a sort of, you cut out and keep, but the information contained in here is going to be informing you over the next 5 years about planning applications and planning decisions. So it is very, very important information for people who are on the planning committee and intend to be on the planning committee over the next 5 years. So do we have any questions on the delivery, part of the delivery that Mike has just made? Councillor Lawrence.
Well, it's not a question. Following from what you said, when we come to noting it, can we also record our thanks to all the officers involved in this? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't pretend that I'd read the whole thing, but I did have quite an interesting bus journey on the way here, and I have read quite a lot of it. And it just shows the quality of the planning department, in fact the quality of the council, that enables us to meet targets. And also this is a very good document to use against those who are always complaining about houses being built mostly people who've already got a house, of course, but it just shows that we have targets set by the government and we do achieve them, and people do need houses. Thank you.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you on that, and it just shows that, you know, we have the targets set, but houses aren't thrown up willy-nilly. There's an immense amount of research has gone into the best way to meet the targets that we've been set for the benefit of the local community. And as you say, it's easy for people to criticise, NIMBYs to criticise you can't build near me, but, you know, the information, you know, that is informed those decisions is comprehensive, to put it mildly. So we have a report here. Would anybody like to move that report?
Can I move it and formally ask us to thank all the officers involved in this?
Absolutely, and second it. Thank you. So the recommendation is that the Planning Committee notes the 5-year housing land supply and completely concurs with Councillor Lawrence that we congratulate planning policy and legal and all those other departments that have been closely involved in putting this report together. All those in favour, please show. And against and abstentions. Thank you very much. That report has been duly noted. Thank you, Mike, very much for that presentation. So we can look now at future planning applications, which are page 121. Any questions or comments on those future planning applications? Agenda item 13, planning delegation panel action sheets, page 169 to 184. Any questions, comments, or otherwise about those delegation panel reports? No. Finally, is agenda item 14. Any other items that the chair considers urgent? I don't have any other items, so I'd just like to thank you all for attending and wish you a safe journey home. And as this is the last planning committee of 2022, wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.